Remember about a week and a half ago, I made my predictions for June, and I said Boston College is going to land 10 commitments in the month of June. And I got comments of people making fun of me, telling me I'm a homer, blah, 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 blah. Well, BC's at 2 right now. I have crystal balls in for a whole bunch more, and I'm going to tell you why my 10 seems like a really reasonable number on today's episode.
You are Locked On Boston College, your daily podcast on the Boston College Eagles, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
This is Locked On BC. I'm your host, AJ Black, editor and publisher of 247's Eagle Insider. Thank you all for listening. This is week number 2 of official visitors for Boston College. Last weekend, we saw 11 players leave. We had 2 commitments. We had Kamori Dixon, a linebacker. We kind of just zipped through this after the Halfley episode. But Kamori Dixon, a linebacker from George Washington in Virginia. And we had Desmond Stevens, a cornerback / safety, more likely a safety, from Clarkston, Michigan, both committing. In addition to that, I left one more crystal ball out there. And the crystal balls are not behind the paywall, so I'm happy to talk to you about it. And that is for Jaja Boyd. Jaja Boyd is a cornerback from Pennsylvania. He was on campus last week as well. I think he's going to end up at BC. He's going to be committing at the end of June. So that's 3 right there. Okay. Then an even bigger crew descended upon Chestnut Hill this past weekend. 14 commitments. 14 recruits came to BC to check out the campus for official visits. Now, the first week was much more heavy and skewed towards the defense. You saw, Aiden Glover, quarterback from Collierville, Tennessee, but for the most part, it was a lot of linebackers, cornerbacks, and defensive linemen coming in that first week. The second week was much more offensive heavy. You saw Henry Hasselbeck, I think, who a lot of folks are waiting to see what happens. He came and did his official visit in between playing in the Mass Lacrosse tournament. I don't know how his team did because I don't follow Mass Lacrosse, but he was there. He did come. I can confirm that. Gerby Lambert, who is I believe, the top Massachusetts recruit in the country right now, according to 247. He has other official visits to Penn State and Ohio State and Notre Dame, but he has BC in there. He's an offensive lineman. He was on campus. You had Keondae Hendry, a 4-star wide receiver who is top 200 on 247, is got major offers everywhere. He was on campus. So you're seeing where I'm coming from here, right, folks? There was a lot of talent, okay? Now we're recording this. It's 9:23 on a Sunday night. There have been no commitments. But if you follow me on Twitter, you know that I put 2 crystal balls in already. And if you know about me and my crystal balls, that sounded bad. You know me and the crystal balls. I don't put them unless I am confident about it, right? So I put 2 down, and I'll talk about them in just a moment. So you have 2 on top of the 3. We are now at June 12th, and I have 5 commitments I am feeling good about for BC. We're not even halfway through the month. So who are the 2 that I am putting crystal balls in on Sunday? And things could change. Hey, not things could change, but things could happen by the time I record this and you listen to this in the morning. First is the recruit who has probably the best name out there. He's on your screen right now. We'll talk about this picture because I think it's really interesting. This is Turbo Richard. And when I looked up Turbo Richard, I was like, is that really his name? And now he has another name, but legitimately everywhere. If you look at his lanyard, it says Turbo Richard. If you look at his 247 profile, it's Turbo Richard. His high school page is Turbo Richard. He's a running back, a 5'9" running back from South Carolina, and his name is Turbo Richard. This goes into the pantheons of like Spiffy Evans. Like if he comes, like if he does commit to BC, Turbo Richard will be one of those guys you see on the all name teams when they're talking about the best names. He's going to be up there. And the name is a good indicator of what he can do. The guy ran for 2,500 yards last year, had 18 touchdowns, I believe, and averaged almost 9 yards per carry. He's 5'9". I think he's like 190 to 200 pounds. So he's big, and he can bench. He can squat 500 pounds. So he's tough too. So he's my first crystal ball. I think I feel pretty strongly that he's going to end up at BC. Now, his other big offer is Wake Forest, but he's got some great G5 offers as well. He's from South Carolina. He's someone to watch. The other name that I'm feeling really confident on, and I think it's a bigger deal, is Josiah Martin, who's from Geyer, Texas. Big time football program. This is a guy, folks, just strap in for a second here. He's only a 3-star, but he was on campus at Alabama this spring. He was on a campus visit with Nick Saban and the staff. He announced just about a month ago that his top 2 were TCU and Alabama. Now, don't get it twisted. There's a lot of times when these things are announced that maybe TCU and Alabama like him, but he's not going to be their like immediate guys they go for. That being said, he has, I think, 38 offers, and you name a big program, he's been offered by them. He runs a 4.3 40. Elite speed. Okay. And in a moment, I'm going to talk about why the wide receiver position and why I think, as I just said, Josiah Martin, I am putting him on commitment watch here. Why I think Darrell Wyatt is doing a bang up job. And we're going to continue talking about that in just a moment. But before we do that, make a fast break to FanDuel during the NBA playoffs, because right now, new customers can get a no-sweat first bet of up to $2,500. That's $2,500 back in bonus bets if your first bet doesn't win. Now, with basketball winding down, do you think the Heat are done? You can get in there and get some good money. How many points Jokic will have? You can get there too. Go get ready for baseball. There's always good prop bets. I love the home run prop bets. Like if you think a guy's going to hit a home run, that's always a fun one to watch. So go to FanDuel.com. It's great. It's safe and secure. You get paid instantly. There's no better place to bet all the playoff action than America's #1 sportsbook. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and get a no sweat first bet of up to $2,500. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon. FanDuel, the official sportsbook betting partner of the NBA. Locked On BC, AJ Black here, and we are talking Cruton. It's Cruton talking here. And I know there's a bunch of you guys out there that are big BC recruit fans. And I have heard, if you've listened to the last 2 years of my podcast, the name that I have pushed as the elite recruiter for BC football has been Azar Abdul-Rahim, now defensive coordinator and defensive backs coach. The guy is a force in the District of Columbia. You saw guys like CJ Burton and there's I'm blanking on the guys' names, but there's been a ton of talent that's come out of the DMV area. Jude Bowery, like if they're in that area, he's usually one of the lead recruiters. But what has impressed me more this cycle, the cycle of 2024, has been wide receiver coach Darrell Wyatt. Now, Darrell Wyatt is a former UCF wide receivers coach, but he also was a positional coach at Texas Austin. He has roots in the state of Texas. Now, this weekend, BC hosted, I think it was 4 or 5 wide receivers from Texas. So you had Josiah Martin, the one I have as a crystal ball to BC. You have Keondae Henry, the one I also mentioned, a 4-star. You had Trey Griffiths, a other 3-star wide receiver. And then you had a kid from the class of 2026 from Texas. All of these guys are from Texas. And that doesn't even include Tamarcus Gray, who's also going to be visiting from Texas. Obviously he's going to close on some of these guys. But the fact that you have a guy like Henry who, he's got big time programs. He told me, and this is going to go up on 247 tomorrow. I have an exclusive interview with Keondae Henry. He said to me that Darrell Wyatt, since I met him, I can honestly say he's the best coach by far and he knows a lot. So that tells you that these kids are listening to him. They are connecting with Darrell Wyatt. And this is making a position that we saw, obviously, when you see the guy out there on the picture, if you're watching on YouTube, Zay Flowers do a lot for BC and be that first like really big wide receiver. To me, it strikes me that this is going to become a trend for BC. Finally, Boston College is going to start to develop wide receivers for the first time in my life. Like, yeah, Richie Cannell is nice, and and Alex Amadon and some of the guys from yesteryear. I mean, you guys can go back in the annals and name some players too, but it's always one guy here, one guy here. To me, you now have Joseph Griffin, Ryan O'Keefe. You have Jaden Skeet, he may not even play this year, but he's got a ton of talent. You're bringing in guys that Nate Johnson from last year. I've heard great things, and no one's talking about him. This is a speedster from Florida. BC is starting to get this wide receiver position right. And this is not to say that, there's obviously other issues on other positions. Like, obviously you'd want to see more offensive line growth, things like that. I'm sticking with wide receiver right now. I think right now, if you were to ask me who the best recruiting coach on the staff is, I would say Darrell Wyatt. And that's no knock on AAR. I just think Wyatt has done such a great job in just 2 years. He brought in Ryan O'Keefe. He brought in Tommy Castellanos, the quarterback that's going to back up or battle with Emmett Moorhead. Then he's bringing in potential 4-stars all over the place. He's recruiting well in the state of Texas. This guy is something special. Now, let's get into that. Was my thoughts on the wide receivers. And if BC goes out there and tanks, all this is for naught. Like, you can recruit your butt off, but if the staff is going to get fired or toast or whatever, there is that doesn't matter. But I'm just telling you where things are at this point, right? So also this weekend, so Turbo Richard put this picture up. BC had their biggest group, 14 recruits on campus. And who comes by to visit? Zay Flowers. As I said, there was an enormous group of wide receivers from around the country on campus. There was talented tight ends, Benjamin Blackburn, who was their top tight end on their board. There was Henry Hasselback. I mean, you bring in a guy that redefined an offense, who lived and breathed Boston College football. And you see, like, this was a smart, savvy move. And I've talked to a couple kids, and it doesn't sound like Zay was there that long, but that's all you need. You don't need him to like show them around. Just saying hi, like, take a picture with him, like what Turbo has here, right? This is exactly the kind of move the staff should do to sell the program. Anytime you can get a Zay Flowers in, you can get a Zion Johnson, even going back. I saw Elijah Strong, who's a forward for the basketball team, meeting with Luke Kuechly in a high school gym, and now they're both in the same state. I believe they're both in North Carolina. But that's the kind of way to manage and sell this program. The staff does it on their own, but you need that extra layer. When you're a wide receiver and you have Zay Flowers, who was just a first-round draft pick, who was dynamic and loved and clearly it was reciprocal because he stayed there. That is a great marketing tool. And good on BC for doing that, because you needed to make this weekend special and doing whatever you can to get your program to stand out. Because many of these kids, Keontae Henry is going to be checking out 3 other programs or 2 other programs. You got kids checking out 4 or 5 other programs. And when they do that, you need to have something. Like, you can all do the same stupid photo shoots. You can have the bed littered with pictures for their hotel room, but adding something like a Zay Flowers, adding something like that can make something incredibly special for the program. So that was a really smart move by the staff. I like that a lot. Now, we're going to have to wait and see what happens here, because in other recruiting news, you love to see the kids come in, but you have to realistically also say to yourself, some of these kids aren't going to commit. And that's starting to happen. BC lost one of the guys I was hoping they would land as a higher end recruit, which was Chibuzi Onwuka's younger brother, Obina Onwuka, committed to West Virginia. Kyle Altuner, who I don't believe was on campus yet, also committed to West Virginia. So two guys, Montel Johnson, who was lower on their board for Rutgers. So you see a couple guys here and there, and that's how this recruiting works. You'll add some new names to the big board and all that good stuff. The West Virginia pair, Onwuka and Altuner, confuse me to the nth degree, because they're not going to a program that's any more stable than BC. I mean, if you were to find a hot seat rankings, Neil Brown at West Virginia is probably at the top. So I don't know if it's an NIL thing. I know everyone jumps to that every time, but I don't think Obina and Onwuka is going to really bring in Kyle Tuner, who are both like mid 3 stars, are going to bring in huge NIL money. But I know everyone just goes to that. But so that's my thoughts on recruiting for the weekend. Now AJ is going to get negative in just a second, because baseball, off of their most successful season all time, they tied their all time win record. They go and lose 2 of their coaching staff. I'm going to talk about what I heard and why it's not a good sign for this program. We'll get into that in just a moment. This is Locked On Boston College. I am your host, AJ Black, and we are talking about baseball here. Now, this weekend, 2 coaches on Boston College's staff left. And the first is Kevin Vance, who is their recruiting coordinator and pitching coach, who just started in 2021. And additionally, they lost hitting coach Tyler Holt. So you lost your 2 highest assistant coaches. Now, the Kendall Rogers tweeted out, he's a big baseball guy, that Tyler Holt left because it sounds like the decision to leave was based on some budgetary constraints at BC. I was like, okay, that's bad. Vance, who's done a nice job of getting BC's pitching staff from being a train wreck a couple of years ago to much more manageable this year, left to go to Arizona. And Mike Gambino told the New England Baseball Journal that he went to a place where he would get more money. And that's what our old goals are. Now, before I get into this, let me just start this off by saying I'm not naive to know that almost every program out there is a stepping stone. Okay. BC is not just the only stepping stone program out there. Believe me, if Dave Clawson got a $3 million or $4 million raise to go to, Notre Dame or the Gators or whatever, he'd do it in a heartbeat. That's the way this world works. There's not really many end destination jobs out there. Arizona baseball, I believe, is really good. So that makes sense. But when I hear budgetary constraints for losing your hitting coach after you produce, batters, like Travis Honeyman and Joey Vetrano and Cameron Leary, that's a tough pill to swallow. And I get irritated when I hear budgetary constraints when a school like Boston College is charging $80,000 a year for students to go to school there, when they're bringing in ACC money and they're not really paying out that much to their coaching staffs compared to other schools in any sport. Baseball, I've heard really bad things about how much they pay there. This is not good. This is not showcasing what BC could be. Now, you've seen different programs start to get their act together in terms of budgets. Jeff Hafley has been able to up his budget to get more staff in. Basketball has done some nice job of bringing some nice names in. But baseball should be there too. Baseball should be able to afford to keep their staff, and they shouldn't be sending, they shouldn't be cutting guys because their coaches, aren't making enough money. BC is an institution that strives for excellence. Money should never be an issue unless it becomes an issue. Like, don't let it become an issue, right? Like, if you're in the ACC and you need to be paying your coaches, commensurate to what most other programs are. And the fact that they're not, that after a season where there was so much goodwill, baseball was dead. And I saw someone in my YouTube comments comment like, "Oh, AJ, you are wrong about Gambino." I mean, come on, folks. Unless you're a parent of the player, I think everyone was wrong on Gambino this year. I don't think, and maybe if you worked for BC, I don't think anyone really imagined that BC would have the year that they had, right? So now that your team has people paying attention, there's people talking about it, there's people watching it, you need to put the money back into that program so that it can sustain, so that you don't lose those fans, that those fans don't go, "Well, they're cheap. This is Boston College all over again," and walk out. That's what happens to all your programs. Because if you're not paying for a good product on the field, you're going to fall behind. And then people aren't just going to go watch it because they're BC graduates. That's only for people like me who have clear issues with finding more important things to do. Most people just tune out and go watch the Sox or do something else. So this is disheartening. Now it's up to the school. Like, if they're an ACC level program, you just put all this money into the Pete Frady Center, into the Harrington Athletics complex. Please go out there and get a good hitting coach. Get another good pitching coach. Don't cheap out on this. Do not go out there and lowball this because you want to save money. We're an ACC level program, Boston College is. Go out there and act like it. This is AJ Black. We'll be back to talk more recruiting news on Wednesday. Sorry, I got a little heated there at the end. Follow me on Twitter at AJBlack247. You can hit me up on Twitter. Become a member of Eagle Insider. We have 2 more days left where you can get 60% off a year. Someone broke it down. It's like 12 cents a day. You get a dime and 2 pennies. That's the cost it's going to cost you to become a member. Go over to Eagle Insider, sign up. You're going to get interviews with the recruits, my predictions, my scouting analysis, everything. I think I had like between 14 and 20 VIP pieces alone last week. Best deal in the business. Go sign up right now. And there's a great community of BC fans out there too in the message board. So it's a lot of fun. Become an Eagles Insider. We'll be back again on Wednesday. Remember, we're not on every day during the summer. So I'll be back on Wednesday. We'll see you all again soon. Take care.